Hello, it's your friend CJ Werleman, and in today's episode, we dive into a topic the US mainstream media believes to be too hot to touch. We are talking about the killing of American citizens by the State of Israel. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show. Now let's get into it. Millions of American voters are finally waking up to reality. And by reality, I mean an overwhelming majority of the United States now understands that Israel represents a clear and present danger to the country.
The biggest threat to U.S. sovereignty is Israel. Trump signed a peace deal. 6 days later, Israel violated it.
What Americans are waking up to, more than anything else, is the manner in which Israel has taken total and complete ownership of their elected politicians, who are elected to serve their constituents, not the interests of a foreign power, especially one that has essentially pillaged and stolen America's wealth. Please, this is not hyperbole. This is just an observable fact, given the cost paid by American taxpayers to fight Israel's wars has exceeded $8 trillion. That's $8 trillion with a capital T, a hefty and unaffordable sum, with US national debt surpassing a whopping $38 trillion last week. Needless to say, record levels of debt translate to a record level of problems. This now unservable debt is why the rate of poverty, homelessness, and suicide has reached unprecedented heights in the United States today. A chain reaction caused partly by the billions of dollars doled out each year to Israeli Jews in the form of national welfare, and mostly by the trillions of dollars paid to fight Israel's wars in the Middle East. Americans might not agree on much these days, but today, Democrats, Republicans, Christians, Muslims, and atheists are uniting in greater numbers against the Zionist state.
The anti-Zionist train is leaving the station. Libertarians are on the train. Democrats are on the train. Independents are on the train. Middle-aged people are on the train. Young people are on the train. Progressives are on the train. A large segment of conservatives are now on the train. Candace Owens' followers are on the train. Tucker Carlson's followers are on the train. Jimmy Dore's followers are on the train. Joe Rogan's followers are on the train. Dave Chappelle's followers are on the train. Billions of people worldwide are on the train leaving the Zionist cult.
Americans now realize there are only 5 types of politicians in the United States. They're either bought by Israel, blackmailed by Israel, are dual citizens of Israel, are scared to death of Israel, or are killed by Israel. Americans now recall former presidents sounding this alarm.
Let me explain something about what is called the Jewish lobby in this country. Their belief is that being for Israel first, that does not mean you're putting America second. An American president, however, has to approach it in a different way, in my opinion. He's got always to think first of what is best for America. An American president must make a decision that does not, in effect, give the Israelis a blank check. And one example of that is a decision that I made. I decided early on in our administration that we were going to seek good relations with Egypt and others of Israel's neighbors. Many of my Israeli friends didn't like that because they wanted a special relationship with Israel and Israel only.
President Nixon should know better than most about the coercive, corrupting, and deadly influence Israel has over America's political class, given his predecessor and former electoral opponent, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, was assassinated by Israeli intelligence operatives. We know this to be true because recently released declassified documents reveal Israel was outraged by JFK's decision to prevent Israel from obtaining nuclear weapons.
The other problem Kennedy faced with Israel was the construction of the atomic reactor at Dimona. JFK was strongly against any proliferation of nuclear weaponry. He had been assured by Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion that Dimona was designed for peaceful uses of atomic energy. In the spring of 1963, Kennedy demanded full inspections by the U.S. of the Dimona reactor and threatened to place American aid for Israel in limbo if no agreement were reached. And at the time of his assassination, Negotiations were in process for biannual inspections.
JFK was assassinated just 2 months after he demanded full inspection of Israel's nuclear reactors. For this very reason, among many others, famed American historian Martin Sandler urged his fellow citizens to forget about JFK assassination conspiracies, which wrongly blame the CIA, the Mafia, and Fidel Castro, and instead spend more time focusing on Israel's culpability.
There's a very surprising series of letters between Kennedy and David Ben-Gurion, not only the premier of Israel, but the founder of Israel, in which they're very angry letters, in which Kennedy is saying to Ben-Gurion, I'm killing myself trying to get a nuclear test ban treaty. I've even got de Gaulle on board, and that's impossible. And you keep testing in Dimona. You've got to stop. And Ben-Gurion, thank you, in so many words says, it's easy for you to say sitting in Hyannisport. I'm sitting with the Arabs all around me, and you want me to give up nuclear testing. And Kennedy threatens him. And he threatens him in such a way that Ben-Gurion resigns. And I will tell you that I found articles, not in any crackpot publications, but in very sophisticated publications saying, forget Lyndon Johnson, forget the CIA, forget Fidel Castro. The Mossad killed Kennedy because they were so upset over what he did to Ben-Gurion.
When Israel isn't killing American presidents, it's using compromise to blackmail them into advancing Israel's strategic interests, like Netanyahu did when he used tapes of President Clinton's telephone sex calls with Monica Lewinsky to blackmail the White House into releasing Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard, who had been spying on the United States government and the American people. He delivered more than 800 highly classified US military documents to the Israeli government over a 17-month period. Secrets that ultimately weakened America's national security, an act of sabotage consistent with a determined enemy, not that of a so-called loyal ally.
In a scandal that has been largely lost to contemporary memory, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was alleged to have blackmailed then-President Bill Clinton by revealing to him that Israel had collected tapes of phone sex calls between the 42nd president and White House intern Monica Lewinsky. The story is worth revisiting amid allegations that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in a long-running Israeli blackmail operation of his own. Netanyahu approached Clinton privately to demand the release of convicted Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard, long a cause célèbre of the Israeli far-right. That's according to reporting at the time from the New York Times. Now, Netanyahu brought up the sex tapes in the context of the Pollard demand, according to subsequent reporting by Washington Examiner editor Daniel Harper in his book, Clinton, Inc., The Audacious Rebuilding of a Political Machine. He writes, quote, not wanting to directly threaten the powerful American president, a crucial Israeli ally, Clinton was told that the Israeli government had thrown the tapes away, but the very mention of them was enough to constitute a form of blackmail.
Former CIA analyst John Kiriakou explains how Israeli spies have infiltrated every level of the United States.
Even our friends spy on us. He said, many of you will come into contact with the 2 Israeli intelligence officers who are based at the Israeli embassy in Washington. There's a representative from Mossad and a representative from Shin Bet. He said, the FBI has been able to identify 187 undeclared Israeli Mossad agents spread all across the United States, spying on our defense contractors to steal our defense secrets. Now, we give the Israelis 99% of what we have. They want to steal that last 1%.
We also know that deceased pedophile sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein worked for and with Israeli intelligence agencies, using underage girls to lure influential and powerful American citizens into so-called honey traps, or rather situations or crimes that can be used against an individual at a later date. And we also know that President Trump is named in the Epstein files, which explains why he has not only allowed Netanyahu to treat him like a fool, but also why Trump released an Israeli diplomat who had been convicted for trying to rape American children in the state of Nevada earlier this year.
So here's what the declaration of arrest from the Henderson Police Department says about the arrest of Tom Alexandrovich, again, an Israeli official who was allowed to fly back to Israel immediately after he was caught trying to lure a minor for sex in an FBI and local police department sting operation.
Israel has long operated as a sanctuary for Jewish pedophiles who rape American children before fleeing to the Zionist state, where they are protected from the long arm of the US justice system, as we reported in a recent episode, and as was reported by CBS 5 years ago.
A CBS News investigation has uncovered a loophole that allows accused and convicted American pedophiles to escape justice by moving to Israel. So Ian Lee has been following this for more than a year, and he traveled to Israel for this investigation. He worked with a group that tracks people accused of sex crimes, which estimates dozens of Americans have used this loophole.
The list of Americans harmed and killed by Israel is far too long to cover in a single episode. We are talking about journalists, activists, diplomats, soldiers, and ordinary US citizens. But we start with the fact that there's no denying Israel's ties to this September 11 attacks, which not only killed 3,000 US citizens on that fateful day, but also resulted in the deaths of 10,000 US servicemen throughout the Middle East, Africa, and Asia in the decade that followed.
You take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone. There is a new age, something new is happening.
In 1954, Israel attacked American military bases and diplomats in Egypt, but blamed the attacks on the Muslim Brotherhood and Arab nationalists to keep the US outraged and engaged militarily in the region, a false flag attack that later became known as the Lavon Affair. You see, attacking and killing Americans has long been Israel's modus operandi for duping and dragging the United States into fighting its wars in the Middle East. But Americans are now finally catching on.
Let's say there's terrorists in a school. Do we bomb our children? Do we bomb the kids? How many innocent lives? About 300. How many bad guys? Just 6 of them. Bomb it all! Well, October 7th. Hey, what about the hospitals? There's 3 or 4 bad guys in there. Bomb it all! What kind of sick mentality is that? If my neighbor does horrific things in my home, do I get to massacre my entire neighborhood and then decide, you know what? Now I'm going to go to Bonita Springs, and then I'm going to go to Georgia, and then I'm going to convince America that we should fight another country and take that leader out because I said they're bad. Makes you wonder who's running our country.
22 years ago, Israel tried to frame the death of American peace activist Rachel Corrie on Hamas, but only to admit later she was murdered by Israeli soldiers while peacefully protesting the demolition of Palestinian homes.
On March 16, 2003, in Gaza, 23-year-old American activist Rachel Corrie stood in front of an Israeli bulldozer trying to stop the demolition of a Palestinian family's home. Just months earlier, she was a college student in Washington State, passionate about peace and human rights. She wrote in her journal, "We are all born and someday we'll all die, but I refuse to just live quietly." That day, as the bulldozer advanced, Rachel refused to move. Moments later, she was crushed and killed, her death sparking global outrage and fierce debate.
Israel also murdered my friend and colleague Shireen Abu Akleh, a Palestinian-American journalist who was deliberately shot and killed by Zionist forces during an Israeli raid on Palestinian homes in the occupied West Bank in May of 2022.
An independent investigation has found that the murder of Shireen Abu Akleh by Israeli soldiers was deliberate. The probe was jointly carried out by London-based Forensic Architecture and Al-Haq, a human rights group. Al Jazeera provided material for the analysis. The investigation, reconstructed in this video, and animation studied the precise angle of the Israeli sniper, location of the journalist, the rate of fire, and the number of bullets used. It rules out any possibility of confrontations between Israeli forces and Palestinian gunmen in the occupied West Bank at the time of Shireen's killing.
Israel has now killed more journalists during the past 2 years than the total number of journalists killed during the First and Second World Wars combined. Its sense of impunity knows no bounds, which should send a chill down the back of every American spine, as illustrated by the threats made against Morgan Ariel, a Christian cultural commentator who received credible death threats from an Israeli Defense Force sniper on US soil. She went to the police. She even reported him to the FBI. But nobody cares because he's an Israeli soldier.
I just wanted to come on here and provide everybody with an update to let you know that I went to the police, and like I said, they did absolutely nothing. They put it on record. I sent some documents to them, and that's about the end of that. They basically just told me that I should block them. That was their advice to me. I reported it to the FBI yesterday, and then I actually called in to the FBI today and then re-reported it because I wanted to make sure that something was going to be done about it, at which point they told me that they had no other questions for me and that they could not tell me whether or not I would be receiving any calls from them or any updates regarding the situation. I also tried to call the Attorney General, who basically told me that unless I have a lawyer representing me, that there's nothing that they're going to be able to do for me. So nobody seems to care at all. But if you are a Zionist or a Jew, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel will personally get involved for themselves. So
Israel is not only trying to silence her voice, but also the voice of any American who stands up and criticizes the Jewish state. It's waging an online propaganda campaign the likes we have never seen before, and it's pressuring social media companies into silencing and suppressing pro-Palestine accounts. Israel has successfully pressured YouTube into demonetizing more than 25,000 channels, including ours, which means our survival is solely dependent on those who kindly and generously support our team via membership on Patreon. Therefore, we kindly ask that you please join them in supporting our effort to expose and confront injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member at patreon.com/CJ Werleman. We can't produce, sustain, and grow this show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits and content to those who do. But for now, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.
Okay, so today on React Today, as part of the World Soil Project, 10 years, 2018 citizen journalism, I have nothing but to get to some conclusions. I don't know if you agree now that on the 31st of October I made a show, very censored, is that for us, for the country, for the world, we need to react today, for Christ's sake, what's going on. And we have no time. The problem is time is against us, not for us. When the oligarchies and the oligarchs do whatever they please and dictate the law, which is incarnated in the American policies by Donald Trump, well, they are nothing but the confession of a crime that he's committing against us, the country and the world, that is going to war against everybody. It wants Venezuelan oil and gold because the Chinese wants also the Venezuelan oil and gold. So does Iran. Iran has their own productions and refineries. Colombia doesn't have refineries enough, even though there was a project in Cartagena, which was stolen by the corrupt government of that country. We come then to the realities of Venezuela. You have to take two birds with one stone. They're going to use the sling of David, because right now, if you haven't forget, something that I also mentioned before in my programs, way before anybody else, Jimmy Dore, all these people, is that even though that we know that America doesn't apologize for anything they do, international law and the Nuremberg 4.0 it's also one of the movements I have supported before anybody else, and that is that, yes, we need a Nuremberg 4.0. Why? Because we have artificial intelligence against us, because we have satellites companies against us, because we have monopolies like Facebook, YouTube. Thanks, guys, YouTube, for this, Rumble, etc. But when they're in control of monopolies, exercising power against us, when we have the intelligence services of Israel already spying on America, and when they have the liberty, and well, after, in 67 actually, that killed 34 American Marine naval personnel and injured 173 and came back to sink the vessel. The Liberty. It's just crazy that the United States of government of Israel, the United States of Israel, and the people in America are taking so long to revolt themselves after what is happening on ice. The Americans can bear weapons. A civil war, we have mentioned it before, is very probable to happen, and I'm very surprised that it hasn't happened before. America's very, but this close to understand that they want them divided, and the state of Israel has taken over America and has taken over the government of the United Kingdom, England, etc. You have to see it with your own eyes. Since the 9/11 of October the 7th, 2023, according to Netanyahu, it's not me saying it, it's him saying it, it's Smotrich saying it, it's all Gallant saying it, even though Gallant is off, but he's still on the list of the International Criminal Court, in order to be processed as criminals of war with Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinetry, and according to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide of 1948 in Article 4, even the genocidal understanding of the people of Israel, which 82% have been demonstrated by different media outlets this year, 82% support the genocide that is happening against the Palestinians. They want the hostages back, but they never told you that many of the hostages were military of Israel, so they are POWs, prisoners of war. The misinformation is so big and so huge that programs like this are dedicated to find out and explain for us, for the country, for the world, how the Pandora's box has been opening since October 7, because it shows us, the country and the world also, the corruption of the Israeli government tentacles around the United States politics since 1948. But before, if you read, for example, it's all about following the Benjamins. Sure, because if you follow the Benjamins, you can read that the book that I just showed you is right in many ways. And I'm talking about the Elders of Zion, because Mearsheimer says we are writing the second volume of that one. Why did he say it? Because Israel is killing and destroying and committing genocide, and that is according to international law, according to United Nations Charter, according to Human Rights Watch, according to international organizations that came after the wheel of 193 countries nowadays, plus 2 observers, which are the Vatican State and Palestine, even though Palestine has been recognized over and over, like Cuba, in order for the United Nations or the United States of Israel to lift the sanctions against Cuba. For decades, for years, the United Nations have been on accord on that, but especially after 2 years on the genocide in front of our eyes. And Sudan, I have to mention Sudan here. I have to mention Sudan. It's happening in Sudan, and not only in Sudan. The tactics of the Israeli government against the Palestinians, proven, like the bombs they use, the ammunition they use, the rifles they use, everything is cataloged, and everything is written down in order to tell us, the country of the world who needs weapons from Israel, something that President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, said, okay, we break relationship with Israel, let's get these people out of here, etc. The right thing to do. The same with South Africa and other countries like Ireland. But there's opposition in Ireland, etc., for Israel, and etc. So the fight is uphill. But there's uphill battles that have been won with strategy and persistence, and President Petro is one of them because he shows with proof, and I have shown in this program for the last 10 years. React Today, part of the World Whale Project, 10 years. Today, I have explained that Article 4 includes the people of Israel. 82% are in favor of the massacre and the genocide. That is inconceivable, and Article 4 is very clear when it says that citizens are to be also included in the judicial reach of the International Criminal Court, because civilians are not exempt from killing and destroying or cooperating with the destructive system, just like Ukrainians did with Stefan Bandera killing Jews in Ukraine because he feels good with the Nazis. So they club up and publicly killed a lot of people, a lot of Jews in Ukraine. And Stefan Bandera is now king in Ukraine and has been for the last 40 years. And in the coup d'etat of 2014, I correct here, 2014, when there was a president elected democratically that was more for neutrality, to please Americans and to have good relationships with the Russian Federation. It was removed from power, and we all know, we have reported it here 10 years ago, it's in my book too. Fuck Europe, fuck the EU. And she went with candies to give the guys that were killing innocent civilians. The dog war was applied in that situation where the interests behind the curtains kill Ukrainian soldiers and kill civilians. I have documented that before for you. When it comes to Ukraine, one of the most, if not the most corrupt country in Europe, before it was taking over a part of the land to protect the Russian-speaking people of the region of Donbass. I have explained that countless times. And Luhansk and Donetsk were taken over by Russia in that special operation. You can ask questions. We can talk about it for hours. But Russia, I read the document before the war happened. Here in this program, React Today is part of the World Whale Project, 10 years, in which China and the Russian Federation, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, accord to abide by the United Nations Charter, but also telling Americans and Europeans that they will not abide by NATO rule, and they will have explained that since Minsk I and Minsk II, which was an opportunity for Angela Merkel and France and the NATO head, which is the United States of Israel, in order to go to war against Russia, because they want Russia. They want to divide Russia into pieces like they did with Syria now and put some totalitarian asshole in charge and get the oil and gas, the industry, divide the people, cause poverty, misery, like they always do in the name of capitalism, because apparently everybody that opposes capitalism is a socialist and a Marxist. Well, I have to tell you guys, it's about the people and nothing about the people, nothing without the people. Nothing about us without us, but everything is happening since the Republican period here in Europe. And Western tradition is nothing but the capitalists doing what the socialists and communists that they critique so much are doing against their own people. And a proof to that is ICE.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. federal government shutdown has entered its 34th day. 2 federal judges ruled Friday the Department of Agriculture must partially disperse funds for SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and ordered the Trump administration to provide an update by today. Food banks and nonprofits nationwide are scrambling to meet the needs of 42 million Americans, including 16 million children whose SNAP benefits were cut off over the weekend. On Friday, President Trump held a lavish Great Gatsby-themed Halloween party at Mar-a-Lago just hours before tens of millions of people lost SNAP benefits. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy wrote on social media, quote, The way he rubs his inhumanity in Americans' face never ceases to stun me. He's illegally refusing to pay food stamp benefits while he throws a ridiculously over-the-top Gatsby party for his right-wing millionaire and corporate friends, unquote. We'll have more on the great Gatsby and what it means for today after headlines. Meanwhile, nearly 13,000 air traffic controllers are working without pay due to the shutdown. CNN reports there have been 98 staffing trigger reports at airports since Friday, meaning air traffic controllers had to alter operations due to staff shortages. Israel's continuing to carry out attacks in Gaza, shelling eastern areas of Deir al-Balah and the Nusayrat refugee camp. Israel's killed at least 226 Palestinians since the U.S.-backed ceasefire went into effect October 10th. Officials in Gaza have accused Israel of also violating the ceasefire by allowing into Gaza just 24% of the aid trucks promised under the deal. On Sunday, Hamas returned the bodies of 3 more Israeli soldiers who were killed during the October 7th attack. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces and settlers killed 2 Palestinians earlier today. Israel also detained at least 15 Palestinians in overnight raids. On Friday, mourners gathered near Ramallah for the funeral of 15-year-old Yamin Samad Hamed, who was killed in an Israeli raid. This is Leila Ghanem, the governor of Ramallah.
The genocide continues not only in Gaza but in all of Palestine because they want to say to all the world, we are in control. We occupy all the world, not only Palestine. There are daily executions. This is a child who was executed like our children, our women, our elders were executed in cold blood because those who do not fear punishment will misbehave. The world should take a stand.
The former top lawyer for the Israeli military has been arrested for her role in the leak of surveillance video that showed Israeli soldiers gang raping a Palestinian prisoner at the Sde Teiman prison last year. The military lawyer, Major General Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi, was arrested after being reported missing on Sunday. She resigned last week. 5 of the Israeli soldiers seen in the video were criminally prosecuted. At the time, Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said these soldiers should be treated like heroes, not villains, unquote. Israel's threatening to step up its attacks on Lebanon. Earlier today, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz accused the Lebanese government of delaying efforts to dismantle Hezbollah. Overnight, Israeli drone strikes killed 4 people in southern Lebanon. On Saturday, the U.S. bombed another boat in the Caribbean, killing at least 3 people. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth claimed the boat was carrying drugs, but once again offered no proof. The U.S. has now bombed 15 boats, killing at least 64 people over the past 2 months. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has denounced the U.S. attacks. Turk's spokesperson, Ravina Shamdasani, spoke Friday.
These attacks and their mounting human cost are unacceptable. The U.S. must halt such attacks and take all measures necessary to prevent the extrajudicial killing of people aboard these boats, whatever the criminal conduct alleged against them.
In related news, the Washington Post reports the Justice Department has told lawmakers that the War Powers Resolution does not apply to the boat strikes because U.S. service members have not been put in harm's way. Former State Department lawyer Brian Finucane told the Washington Post, quote, "It's a wild claim of executive authority," unquote. This comes as the U.S. continues to amass more ships and aircraft near Venezuela. During an interview on 60 Minutes, CBS's Norah O'Donnell questioned President Trump about Venezuela.
On Venezuela in particular, are Maduro's days as president numbered?
I would say, yeah. I think so, yeah.
And this issue of potential land strikes in Venezuela, is that true?
I don't tell you that. I mean, I'm not saying it's true or untrue.
President Trump is threatening military intervention in Nigeria, accusing the government of failing to protect Christians. In a post on Truth Social, Trump wrote in part, quote, "The USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns a-blazing. If we attack, it'll be fast, vicious, and sweet, just like the terrorist thugs attack our cherished Christians," he said. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth replied to the post by writing, "Yes, sir," unquote. Speaking to reporters yesterday aboard his plane, President Trump again vowed to take action in Nigeria.
They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that part of the world, very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
But organizations monitoring violence in the region say there's no evidence to suggest Christians are killed more than other religious groups in Nigeria. This is Malik Samuel, a senior researcher at Good Governance Africa.
This is not a Christian genocide because the facts don't support it. If you look at the areas where this conflict is rife, even if you take Borno State alone, you look at the northern Borno, many of these communities are Muslim dominated. So most of the victims of Boko Haram violence are Muslims.
Later in the broadcast, we'll speak with the Nobel Literature Prize winning Nigerian writer Wole Soyinka. He was just recently denied a visa back into the United States. The head of the Red Cross says history is repeating itself in Sudan's Darfur region after reports of mass killings by the Rapid Support Forces, RSF paramilitary group, in the city of El Fasher. It comes as Sudan's government says the RSF has killed at least 2,000 people since the paramilitary group has seized control of El Fasher. But witnesses say the death toll could be much higher as tens of thousands of civilians remain trapped in the city. The mayor of Evanston, Illinois, has opened 2 investigations into the actions of federal immigration agents. On Friday, one agent was filmed repeatedly punching a man in the head while he was pinned to the pavement. Moments earlier, an agent pointed a gun at a group of bystanders.
Out of here! Put the gun away! We're gonna shoot people!
Evanston Mayor Daniel Bliss denounced the federal agents.
ICE agents have assaulted Evanston residents, beaten people up, grabbed them, abducted them, taking people off the street once again because of the color of their skin. It is an outrage. Our message for ICE is simple: get the hell out of Evanston.
On 60 Minutes, CBS's Norah O'Donnell questioned President Trump about federal immigration agents using violent tactics.
More recently, Americans have been watching videos of ICE tackling a young mother, tear gas being used in a Chicago residential neighborhood, and the smashing of car windows. Have some of these raids gone too far?
No, I think they haven't gone far enough because we've been held back by the judges, by the liberal judges that were put in by Biden and by Obama.
You're okay with those tactics?
Yeah, because you have to get the people out.
Trump's popularity ratings are at an all-time low. A mayor in Mexico was shot and killed in a crowded plaza during Day of the Dead celebrations on Saturday. Carlos Alberto Manzo Rodriguez, the mayor of Urupuan in the western state of Michoacan, had been an outspoken critic of drug cartels and organized crime. And the United Nations Security Council's adopted a U.S.-backed resolution supporting Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara as the basis for negotiations in the territory's political future. Morocco's occupied Western Sahara for half a century. 10 countries joined the United States in supporting the measure. Russia, China, and Pakistan abstained. Algeria did not cast a vote. The Polisario Front, the Sahrawi liberation movement seeking independence, denounced the vote, saying it would not take part in, quote, any peace process or negotiations based on proposals that aim to legitimize the Moroccan military occupation, unquote. To see our coverage of Western Sahara over the years, go to democracynow.org. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Billions of dollars allocated to ICE, $46 billion, in order for them to do whatever they want. And now they want to spend the policies that are applying through violence and armed soldiers doing what Israel do to Palestine with weapons and intelligence, A200, Palantir, and all these in charge of identifying Latinos and everybody that is not white, regardless of their citizenship and their importance in society, in the fabric of society. They're just raiding them with helicopters, movie style, Hollywood style, using the tactics that Israel has been using since 1948 against Palestinians and before.
They started a world war. Committed mass murder and genocide.
2.819 Insassen.
And after the Nazis were defeated, the world had to decide what to do with the men responsible for some of the worst crimes in history.
Als die Schlacht ihrem Ende entgegenging, stürmte die Rote Armee eine Stadt des Chaos und der rauchenden Trümmer.
The answer was to try something new, something that had never been done before. The Nuremberg trials were a kind of global courtroom where for the first time ever, leaders were held personally accountable for war crimes and crimes against humanity.
But especially now with technology, with advanced technology, that's why I said that a Nuremberg trial has to be 4.0, not 2.0. Because it uses A200, artificial intelligence, face recognition, biological recognition, iris recognition, they recognize your eyes, etc. Your bank account can be cancelled, you cannot access your funds. This is totally illegal, totalitarian regime coming from Israel for America, dude. Even though the Californian districts are supposed to be Jewish and raise the Star of David every morning instead of the American, because it's controlled by the Jews. I have reported that. So when you don't see that this is a colonization plan, but you don't realize England, Europe, the Western tradition, that we are under a colonization program by our elites, supported by police, by ICE, by special tactics that they're using in Australia. Look at the pandemic, for example, antecedents. Los Angeles, Chicago, Portland, and now expanded in 10 different other cities in the United States using Israeli tactics in order to people control. That is nothing but colonization, dude. If you don't see that happening in your own country, here Canada has done the same with the truckers. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start doing it again. But there's election times in Canada pretty soon, and they're calling for prime ministry anticipated elections, and I think that will be the right thing to do. In order to destitute the bankers and the transnationalists and, the Israeli influence everywhere around the world, because what the Pandora's of 9/11 of 7 of October 2023 opened is nothing but the corruption and the influence of the state of Israel all around the world, especially in the Western tradition, which is something very dangerous, because nobody lives like Israel. The Western tradition pays for all the Israeli citizens' college, school, citizenry, rights, freedoms, homosexuality, lesbianism. You can have everything you want. You can live free there. Pedophiles, it's a paradise for pedophiles, etc. But we are all in the world paying, because of faith and tradition, to Israelites live like anybody else, and in order for them to demand from us to do what they want, because they're like people of God in one way, and the second way, they have more money than anybody else. United States alone has given more than $300 billion to 9 billion people that live there in Israel. 9 million Israelis, 347 million, if I'm not wrong, since 1948. Who's not going to live like a king like that? Better than Switzerland or anybody else in the world. If your college is already covered, if you are born in a place where everything is covered, that should be United States, that should be Central and Latin America, that should be England, the UK, the Western tradition. But the far right and the media of those governments tell you, the country and the world, in the Western tradition, here in Canada, everywhere, that it's okay to be capitalist, and whoever opposes for what is social, that Israel lives and probably deserves, not in my book, but when he kills and destroys and commits genocide, no way, no. And American doesn't, and Canada doesn't, and they cut our checks and our services for hundreds of dollars in order to send millions or billions of dollars for lost causes like Ukraine and supporting Israel in this genocide campaign, and soldiers that go kill women and children having pleasure doing it. Soldiers, trained soldiers in Israel by American contractors, and then they go to Central and South America. We have proven that the influence of Colonel in Colombia, Colonel Klein, training the paramilitaries that cause so much harm in Central and South America just to give money to the elites and the oligarchs in that country that now are against President Petro, who has the MI5, the MI6, who has the Mossad, the A200, the telephones, the intelligence satellite services, infiltrated people in the government, 7 bases in Colombia, and the United States wants to use Colombia to go to war against Venezuela. Well, they need 2 birds with 1 shot on that sling of the Satan it cannot be David, because if it's David, we in the New Testament used to love the Old Testament, but the Old Testament is against the New Testament, so we have nothing in common there. That's it. And if you want to use us and spy on us like you always have done, and the far right in Central America is losing their ground, according to the 26th of October opposition, in this case, oppositions against the United States of Israel, in order to take Central and South America as their horse, because that's what the elites are in Central and South America and everywhere, even including the United States, Canada, and the European Union. You should learn from Central and South America. We should learn from Central and South America here in Canada, because they have fought terrorism since 1492, dudes, and we are being victims of terrorism, literal terrorism, with the genocide in Gaza, in England, when Israel is the only country in the world that has any other right to supersede United Nations, to supersede international law, to supersede humanitarian organizations created with the State of Israel in 1948, and the United Nations chartered 193 countries out of 195 that do exist, in order to prevent this from happening. And these guys are just wiping their butts with the Constitution, and they already did it 2 years ago when this envoy for Israel in the United Nations wiped his ass and read the United Nations Charter in front of us, the country and the world, and laugh at it. Shame on you. And he blamed us. As you can see, the wars for independence are back. Yes, the oligarchies, yes, because as I have said and nobody else have said it, I repeat, for the last 10 years I have said that there should be a separation between church and state. Sure, that is since the days of Copernicus. All right, it was proved after, centuries after. The point is, we don't have time, and we need to have a separation between capital, foreign entities, foreign organizations, and the First Amendment, in which the billionaires support their attitude, corrupting the whole system, and calling everything that is social communism and socialism. Well, fuck you, whatever you want to call it. What is social is to be covered, period. Mandatory. That's what Finland, Sweden, and all these countries show us, the country in the world, to imitate, and it's possible. And you don't have to work 40 hours, but 40 hours a week. You don't need more than that, and you can be very productive. That's what those countries show us, which now sided with the political elites and the power of capital and the influence of a foreign entity, which is the State of Israel, which has been proven year after year, especially October 7, 2023, but since the creation in 1948 with Ben Gurion, blah, blah, we have talked about that, to the point that the corruption is so big that they are willing to go against Russia, who can destroy them in a swift of a second, like they have learned nothing from the Second and the First World War. And that is crazy, that is dementia, that is madness, because if madness is something, according to Albert Einstein, is to try to do the same, to take a result on a process that is not going to deliver that result, and you keep on trying it over and over and over again. That's what capitalism is. That's what the State of Israel is, a foreign entity that has taken over Europe, the Western tradition itself whatsoever, and their political class to the point that they're using ICE tactics in England, in Sweden, in Finland, everywhere. And they're dividing all the countries in order to take them over. Not to mention the transformation of the earth, which is getting dry and dry and dry every time. Every day more. Which you can call, as I have called it, like, 5 to 7 years ago, and always, terraforming, dude. Isn't that what's going on here? You don't get that? Do you think exopolitics has nothing to do with what's going on here? Don't you understand that this is a colonization process? Am I scaring you guys? We need to react today as part of the World's Way Out project in order to understand that the wars for independence are back.
Some comments from my very generous Patreons who follow me on patreon.com/George Galloway and on whose support I rely. Say, Dr. Randall Doyle says world-class engineers, irrefutable science, and hundreds, perhaps thousands of eyewitnesses told of a tragedy that occurred 9/11 that did not even come close to the official version. It was an inside job, period. Glenn Jenkins says the official 9/11 account is one of the most unlikely conspiracy theories going. Anyone who genuinely cares about the victims on the day and the millions in the years following should be calling for a fully independent inquiry with subpoenas and evidence on oath. And Ben says Bush Cheney responsible for the lives of thousands, if not millions. The Biden regime isn't that far behind. And a legend on my Patreon, Graham Briggs White, says the way these towers came down was in a professional, controlled manner. Building 7 went down not even being touched, and footage from the Pentagon security cameras, overlooked car park footage, clearly shows a missile attack. And Carl in Belfast says 9/11 Twin Towers and Building 7 were all controlled demolition. Obviously planes hit both towers, but the full destruction was demolition. Planes alone would not bring the whole building down, and Building 7 was not even hit by a plane.
We hope that our generals, we hope that our commanders, we hope that our colonels, we hope that our soldiers don't use that force against us that much like they're doing in America. Because America has the right to bear arms and you're pushing it too hard and you're going to get started to get killed, and President Trump is going to say, hey, this act of war, and he's going to invoke whatever acts, insurrection, because the citizens have the right to protect themselves, Mr. Donald Trump. Here, there in America, and every other colony or republic that you're supposed to be a Republican is supposed to represent. That's why President Petro down there in South America proved you wrong and you're mad at him because of it. They can spark in one of the 7 bases, kill a few soldiers, sure. American soldiers have been killed in Colombia, so America is going to intervene. War, total war, like in Iraq, and start bombing the President Palace and kill them all like they did with Allende in 1973. This is going to come with a different price tag because the Colombian people are going to fight back. And not only that, I hope alliances and other countries don't let that happen, because what is happening in Gaza with the indifference of China and Russia is unacceptable, even though the people that have to be in those interventions should be the Sunnis, the Arab countries, which are so disappointed. If I were their God, Allah, and whatever, I will be very disappointed, as is mentioned in their surahs, that you have to protect the innocent and the people. But they're not doing it. They're just common interests. We have beautiful beach house fronts, so we don't want to destroy that. How come? No, their community and say, too bad, man. We have common interests with Israel. We have common interests with the United States and Europe. Nah, we're going to do that. But Allah is mad at you. Well, Allah can wait. That's what they're saying. In the meantime, the Yemenis are fighting for Palestine. In the meantime, Iran is trying to protect the assassination and genocide that is being committed. It's not me saying it. It's the International Criminal Court, it's the International Court of Justice, it's the conventions, it's whatever I have cited in this show. So, here in Canada, it doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal. I'm going to be called socialist and communist. I don't give a damn what is socialist to be covered, and those nets are mandatory. And if you're going to spend $150 billion without their permission, Mr. Carney, I'm sorry, but you're out of the office. You have to ask us, not Donald Trump. Okay, because nothing about us without us. For us, for the country, for the world. Hope to see you next time. There's many things to talk. The peace in Venezuela is not going to happen. I anticipated it before. If there's a country that needs regime change, it's the United States of Israel. And yeah, in Europe the same. This is a worldwide revolution, guys. They push us that far. So for us, for the country, for the world, revolution first, because the wars for independence are back. I hope peacefully. I ask for a peaceful one. But if the cops keep on killing us and poking our eyes off with rubber bullets and gassing us out in the name of capitalism and the imposition not of the rule of law that I have mentioned in this program against the Bill of Rights here in Canada and the Constitution, that is treason to the country. It's not only fascism, it's treason to the Constitution that, again, was bled and was cried, and the aftermath was horrible for these people, these bankers, these elites, these super rich billionaires to come together and say, we don't give a damn. Those are the guys to be defeated. Again, listen to President Petro, listen to the countries that you are not supposed to listen to because they were vassals of yours. Well, those vassals have survived since 1492, and now it's your turn. Western tradition, that includes the UK, that includes the European Union, that includes, of course, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the United States. Again, for us, for the country, for the world, hope to see you next time in the next edition of React Today as part of the World's Way Up Project. Au revoir. Bye-bye. Hasta pronto. Beautiful day.